Imagine a world with no smartphones, no internet, no breaking news alerts flashing across your screen. Yet somehow, in the muddy, chaotic streets of medieval Europe, news could spread faster than a wildfire. A royal scandal in London could reach Paris in days. A Viking raid on a coastal village might be whispered about in inland markets before the week was out. How did they do it? How could people in the Middle Ages, without a single tweet or email, share information across vast distances with such speed? Stick with me, because what you're about to discover will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about communication. From clever messengers to surprising animal allies, the medieval world had tricks that might just blow your mind. Let's dive into the secrets of how news traveled fast in a time when the fastest thing around was a galloping horse. Picture this. It's 1066, and William the Conqueror has just won the Battle of Hastings. The news of his victory needs to reach every corner of England and beyond to secure his claim to the throne. No telegraph, no radio, no way to post a status update. So how did they make sure everyone knew? The answer lies in a system so ingenious it rivals modern logistics. The medieval world relied on a network of human couriers, horseback riders, and even feathered friends to carry messages across kingdoms. But it wasn't just about speed. It was about strategy, trust, and sometimes a bit of cunning. Want to know the first trick they used? Drop a comment below with your guess, and let's see if you're right. The backbone of medieval communication was the courier system, a web of dedicated messengers who were the FedEx of their day. These weren't just random guys with a horse. They were highly trained, often sworn to secrecy, and sometimes risked their lives to deliver a single message. Kings, nobles, and even merchants employed couriers to carry handwritten parchments sealed with wax. A courier could cover up to 50 miles a day on horseback, switching mounts at relay stations to keep the pace. Think of it like a medieval pony express, but with higher stakes. If a courier was caught by bandits or rival factions, the message could be lost, or worse, fall into the wrong hands. Imagine being a courier galloping through dark forests, knowing one wrong move could spark a war. What would you do to protect your message? Share your thoughts in the comments, I'm curious. But couriers weren't just running solo missions. They operated within a larger system of relay stations, often called posts, strategically placed along major roads. These posts were like medieval pit stops, stocked with fresh horses, food, and sometimes armed guards. A courier would ride into a post, hand off the message to a fresh rider, or grab a new horse and keep going. This relay system meant news could travel hundreds of miles in just a few days. For example, in the 13th century, the Mongol Empire perfected this system, allowing messages to cross thousands of miles from China to Eastern Europe in mere weeks. In Europe, royal courts used similar setups. When King John of England died in 1216, news of his death reached London from the north in just 3 days. That's faster than some modern mail services. Ever wonder what it was like to work at one of these relay stations? Drop a comment with what you think it would be like to be a medieval postmaster. Now, let's talk about something even more surprising: the role of animals in spreading news. You've probably heard of carrier pigeons, but did you know they were a medieval game changer? These birds weren't just pets, they were elite messengers. Pigeons could fly up to 600 miles in a single day, carrying tiny scrolls tied to their legs. Castles, monasteries, and even merchant guilds kept pigeon lofts to send and receive urgent messages. During sieges, when couriers couldn't get through, pigeons were often the only way to communicate. In 1241, during the Mongol invasion of Hungary, pigeons carried warnings to nearby towns, saving countless lives. But pigeons weren't foolproof. Hawks, storms, or even hungry villagers could take them down. Imagine trusting a bird to deliver life or death news. Would you rely on a pigeon to save your town? Let me know in the comments what you'd do. But it wasn't just couriers and pigeons. The medieval world had another secret weapon: the power of gossip. Markets, taverns, and churches were the social media platforms of the Middle Ages. A merchant arriving from a distant city might share news of a battle or a new king while unloading his wares. By the next day, that news would spread to every farmer, baker, and blacksmith in town. Pilgrims and travelers also played a huge role. The Camino de Santiago, a famous pilgrimage route, was like a medieval information highway. Pilgrims swapped stories of wars, miracles, and scandals as they walked, carrying news from Spain to Germany and beyond. This organic spread of information was shockingly fast because people loved to talk. Think about it. When was the last time you heard a juicy rumor and couldn't wait to share it? Comment below with a time you helped spread some news, medieval style. Let's shift gears and explore how the church, one of the most powerful institutions in medieval Europe, became a news network of its own. Monasteries and cathedrals weren't just places of worship. They were hubs of information. Monks, who were often the only literate people in a region, copied and shared letters between bishops, kings, and even the Pope. These letters, called epistles, often contained political updates, religious decrees, or warnings of invasions. The Church's vast network of clergy meant news could travel from Rome to remote villages in weeks. For example, when the Black Death hit Europe in 1347, church bells rang out warnings, and priests spread the word about quarantine measures. The Church also used sermons to broadcast news to illiterate peasants, who made up most of the population. Imagine sitting in a cold stone church, hearing your priest announce a new crusade. How would that news change your life? Share your thoughts below. But what about the written word itself? How did messages stay secure in a world full of spies and thieves? Medieval people were clever about protecting their news. Important messages were often written in code or cipher, understandable only to the intended recipient. Wax seals, stamped with a lord's unique crest, ensured a letter hadn't been tampered with. Some messages were even hidden inside objects, like a hollowed-out staff or a loaf of bread. Couriers might memorize messages instead of carrying parchment, reducing the risk of interception. In 1381, during the Peasants' Revolt in England, rebels used secret verbal messages to coordinate their uprising, keeping their plans hidden from the king's spies. This level of secrecy makes you wonder, could you crack a medieval code? Drop a comment with your best spy tactic. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of how news traveled across borders. Medieval Europe wasn't a single unified place. It was a patchwork of kingdoms, duchies, and city-states, often at war. Yet, trade routes like the Silk Road and the Hanseatic League connected distant regions, carrying news alongside goods. Merchants were some of the best-informed people in the Middle Ages because they traveled constantly. A Venetian trader in Constantinople might hear about a new pope or a Turkish invasion and carry that news back to Italy. Ships also played a role. A single vessel docking in Bruges or Lisbon could bring news from as far as the Middle East. In 1453, when Constantinople fell to the Ottomans, sailors spread the news to Western Europe within weeks, sparking panic and calls for a new crusade. Imagine being a sailor, stepping off a ship with news that could change the world. What would you say first? Let me know in the comments. But not all news was serious. The medieval world loved a good story, and traveling minstrels and troubadours were the rock stars of their day. These wandering performers sang ballads about heroic knights, scandalous affairs, or monstrous beasts, often weaving in real events. A minstrel in France might sing about a tournament in England, spreading news of the winner's glory to eager crowds. These songs weren't just entertainment. They were a way to share history and news with people who couldn't read. Some ballads, like those about Robin Hood, became so popular they shaped how people viewed their leaders. Minstrels could also be spies, gathering gossip in one court and selling it to another. Picture yourself as a troubadour, singing for a crowd of rowdy peasants. What story would you tell to keep them hooked? Share your idea below. As we dig deeper, let's talk about the role of public proclamations. Town criers, armed with bells or horns, were the medieval equivalent of a news anchor. They stood in market squares, shouting royal decrees, war updates, or local gossip to anyone within earshot. In 1415, after the Battle of Agincourt, town criers across England announced Henry V's victory over the French, boosting national pride. Criers were trusted because they spoke for the king or local lord, but they also had to be loud and charismatic to hold a crowd's attention. Some even added a bit of flair, turning dry announcements into dramatic performances. Imagine being a town crier, tasked with delivering bad news, like a tax hike. How would you keep the crowd from booing you off the square? Drop your strategy in the comments. Now, let's address something you might not expect. The role of women in spreading news. While men dominated official roles like couriers or criers, women were the unsung heroes of informal networks. Noblewomen like Eleanor of Aquitaine exchanged letters with allies across Europe, sharing political gossip and strategic plans. In villages, women gathered at wells or markets, swapping stories about everything from harvests to wars. Midwives who traveled between homes often carried news of births, deaths, or local scandals. These women weren't just gossiping, they were connecting communities. In 1314, when Robert the Bruce defeated the English at Bannockburn, Scottish women spread the news through songs and stories, keeping morale high. Think about the women in your life who always seem to know what's going on. Who's the best news spreader you know? Share their story below. Let's zoom out and look at how all these systems work together. The medieval world was a tapestry of communication, weaving together couriers, pigeons, gossip, church networks, trade routes, minstrels, criers, and women's informal channels. No single method was perfect, but together, they created a surprisingly robust network. News of the Magna Carta in 1215 spread from England to France and beyond in weeks, thanks to this multi-layered system. Compare that to today, where a viral tweet can reach millions in minutes, but a power outage can grind everything to a halt. The medieval system was resilient because it didn't rely on technology, just human ingenuity and determination. Which part of this system do you think was the most impressive? Comment below and let's debate. But there's a darker side to this story. Not all news was accurate. Rumors and misinformation could spread just as fast as the truth. A single exaggerated tale of a dragon sighting or a witch's curse could spark panic. During the Crusades, false reports of victories or defeats sometimes reached Europe, swaying public opinion and even military strategy. Medieval people weren't naive. They knew to question what they heard, but without fact-checking tools, they relied on trusted sources like the church or local lords. This makes you wonder, are we really that different today, with fake news spreading online? What's a rumor you once believed, only to find out it wasn't true? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear. As we near the end, let's reflect on why this matters. The medieval world's communication systems shaped history. News of battles, treaties, and disasters influenced kings, peasants, and everyone in between. These systems also laid the groundwork for modern communication. The relay posts inspired postal services, carrier pigeons influenced telegraphy, and town criers paved the way for newspapers. Next time you send a text or watch a news broadcast, remember, you're part of a tradition that started centuries ago, in a world of parchment and hoofbeats. What's one thing from the medieval system you wish we still used today? Drop it in the comments and let's keep the conversation going. Before we wrap up, let's talk about how you can dive deeper into this topic. Visit a local history museum to see medieval manuscripts or seals up close. Check out books like The Time Traveler's Guide to Medieval England by Ian Mortimer for more juicy details. And if you're as fascinated by this as I am, subscribe to the channel for more videos on medieval life. Next week, we're exploring why medieval toilets were absolute nightmares. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Hit that like button if you learned something new, and share this video with a friend who loves history. Let's keep the medieval vibes alive. What's your favorite medieval fact so far? Comment below, and I'll see you in the next video.